Intergenerational trauma has ignited feverish intellectual stimulation. Not surprisingly, and quite understandably, the primary focus has been on the debilitating residue of secrets, displacements, and violence haunting individual lives. My explorations have led me to believe cities and their populations experience similar risks, and Detroit's highly photographed ruins graphically illustrate the consequences of unaddressed urban intergenerational trauma. Yet, not all ruins cause retinal scars, and not all traumas are suffered in silence. For some who don't self-identify as victims or survivors, blight and deadening decay become instead a raucous, free-form art project. Art, as perhaps only art can, binds psychic wounds and interrupts the inevitability of social suffering. Lives are reclaimed as retro visionaries, make, unmake, and remake projects where traumas are exposed and transformed. Discarded cultural artifacts, when reintroduced with imagination and boldness, can transform neighborhood blight into creative placemaking. Such efforts provoke reassessment of the intersections between creativity, resiliency, and trauma. Welcome to the Heidelberg Project.
Tyree has always said that you can't heal the land until you heal the minds of the people. Rehabbing a house in a community like that would last maybe 6 months. The key, and what Tyree, and I think this was ingenious, and I'm not always so sure that he always knew exactly what he was doing, but in his mind, it was to take these things that had been discarded, pick them up, dust them off, add color, rearrange them. In doing that, he gave people something else to think about. Whether it was enraged or whether people got upset, whether people didn't like it, it didn't matter. The fact of the matter was he was getting people's attention, and that was where it needed to begin. In 1986, Tyree says that he returned back from Oklahoma, living in Oklahoma for a while, and saw that the neighborhood had taken on changes for the worse. He was studying art in art school, but he wanted to take his work off the canvas and make a difference in his neighborhood, his community. So he started by cleaning up one vacant house, and one became two, became three. People they didn't really get what the hell he was doing, to be perfectly honest. But I believe that he was on to something. I saw something in the children that were moved and were anxious to be in his company and his presence. The vacant houses, the abandoned houses, began to become these giant art sculptures. He began gaining national and international attention. I came in 1993, which was after the 91 demolition. The first house was destroyed in 1989. So Tyree had already experienced the demolition, and at that time, his grandfather had just died. He was going through a divorce. So when I met Tyree in 1993, he was literally at the lowest state. And the interesting thing is that he was sitting on the curb, and he was talking to a judge of all people. And he recalls this situation with feeling like he had been rescued because he really didn't know what he was going to do. At that time, I had studied metaphysics for 12 years, and I literally started off by just asking Tyree questions, and those questions became quite therapeutic. And so I began recording them because they were it was really just as much for me as it was for him. And I decided to give it all up and come and work with this man who had this idea that people were already against. And quite frankly, when I turned down the street, I said to him, what in the hell is all this? And I remember thinking, this man has way too much time on his hands. I'm going to help him get a real job, get a real grip on the real world. And lo and behold, did I know that this was going to be just as therapeutic, if you will, or medicinal for me as it was the help that I was able to give him. So coming into the project for myself was about helping him to build a foundation. He was this visionary. He was this magic man. I was structure, and I was organization, and I was business. So when they say to us, well, gosh, does the city support you? Who cares? At this point, I have to be frank about that. If they did, it'd be wonderful. What would that mean? I'm not so sure. So there was a time that we thought and felt that we needed to have city support in order for the project to be successful. Not anymore. Frankly, I think they need us. I think that when you don't know anything different, trauma to you could be a way of life. And you know what they say, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. Now, I digress for a minute and just share this point. We did a little, what I call a little experiment, where we talked with 10 children who were privileged from the suburbs and 10 children who lived and grew up in the neighborhood. And we asked the 10 children who were privileged, would they prefer to jump on a trampoline or a mattress? And they preferred the mattress. And we asked the 10 children from the urban community if they would prefer to jump on a mattress or a trampoline. Of course, they preferred the trampoline. My point being that if you don't know anything other than what is considered trauma by the larger world, to you it's just normal life. So what he experienced and what he was dealing with, there was always no place to go but up. Well, there are what I would think are three major motifs in all of Tyree's work: the dots, the faces, and the shoes. Numbers are important too, and the clocks. But those three themes are always prevailing. The dots, first of all, he goes very, very deep into the concept behind the dots. First of all, life repeats. Secondly, he's talking about the different colored dots. He's talking about the universal harmony of all mankind. That's the reason you have the Dottie Waddy house on the street, or the new White House, he calls it. So the polka dots are very symbolic of a number of things, how things repeat: the cell, the moon, the sun, life in general, and of course a reflection of all people. The shoes being kind of like a transient tool that moves us around. He talks a lot about the soul. And you'll notice that on Heidelberg Street, there's a tree with shoes hanging. And his grandfather recalled lynchings in the South, and he asked them if he could see the people. He said he could see the soles of them swinging. And the bottom of our shoes are called soles. But today, it means we're lifting up the soul of the community. So he talks a lot about the inner man. And then the faces, my goodness. I mean, the faces, you'll always see the faces. And if you notice, there's something very distinctive about the faces. And at the same time, it's repetitive. And that's that they're always smiling with the choppy teeth. You're going to always see that no matter what in all of his images. And you can't tell all the time whether they're what race or anything like that, because they're always full of color. Going back to the inner man, if you think about the skeleton, he's always smiling, no matter what kind of life he had. You know, and I think that's fascinating, the fact that circumstances, once again, you know, depending on where you come from, depending on your culture, who's to define what happiness is for someone? We've resolved ourselves to the fact that although it's been difficult, it's been very hard to go through demolitions. I've gone through a demolition now and a demolition of fires. Tyree has done it 3 times. The work that we do is extremely powerful, extremely powerful. And I think that what the things, and Tyrese said this, of course, the things are the front. The things that he uses, the objects, are really a catalyst that goes to a much deeper issue, matter, concern, and that is the power of the human spirit, the recycling of the mind, if you will. The fact that people come from all over the world. Now, what they're getting is very interesting because we are talking about organized chaos, so to speak, or we're talking about organized fragments. But I think that what they're really experiencing is the power of the human spirit, resiliency. Being able to, this is the reason why we say that one of the core principles that the project has taught us is art as a medicine. First of all, most people don't know they're sick. And secondly, we look at medicine from the perspective of suppressing or soothing or coating, but we never go to the heart of the matter. And so just like you have the ghetto, or you have the urban community where people are exposed and naked, and their problems are there for the whole world to see, you also have another world where people are better able to mask their sickness or medicate their sickness. And I think Heidelberg exposes that because it's so raw. The energy of it is so moving. You're like, what the hell was in a person's mind to make them do this? And that creates this platform, this amazing stage for conversation.